Welcome to Texans on Tap. I'm Brandon Strange with Charlie Polillo and Josh Jordan. You can read their work on sportsmap.com and follow them on X at Polillo and at Josh Jordan 975. On today's episode, it's the battle of the first place teams. But with the division wrapped up for both teams, is there more on the line than just bragging rights? We're going to talk about it. Just a reminder to hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click the bell for notifications so you know when new content drops, like when we go live after every game this season. And if you're on the go, we're on all your favorite podcast apps. Just search Texans on Tap. The Houston Texans bring their Dolly Parton themed 9-5 win-loss record into Arrowhead to take on the one-loss Chiefs team, winners of their last four. These teams play a very similar style of game, especially as of late. A good defense that keeps them in the game and just enough offense to get the job done. The big difference, besides the 4-game spread in their loss column, is the pedigree for the Chiefs. Before we get into the matchups, though, guys, what do you think a Texans win would mean for Houston at this point?
Well, first, the pragmatics of the standings. Right? Division title is salted away. They do have upward mobility to the 3 seed, though, in the AFC. Currently a game behind Pittsburgh, but if they wind up tied, good position to win a conference tiebreaker, conference record tiebreaker. And it's obviously some putting cart before the horse on this. But if the Texans are the 3 seed, and win in the first round, and lo and behold, the 2 seed gets knocked off, hey, you can get a second home game. It's a better chance of getting that second home game bumping up from the 3 seed than if you're the 4 seed and you need both the 2 and the 3 to lose in the first round. Now, look, Texans are going to be challenged as is to win their first round game. But if you're to follow the Dolly theme, contemplating boom or bust for the Texans, they need to get beyond the division round. And you have more wherewithal, a better likelihood of getting there if you have a divisional round home game, following up your wild card home game, and beating the Chiefs, presumably beating Tennessee in the finale, will leave Baltimore in the middle in the breach. If the Texans get to 11-6, Steelers have a challenging closing schedule, and getting to that 3 seed is attainable.
I think a lot of it will be about perception. You know, if you see a lot of the power rankings lately, the Texans aren't in the top 10 of most of them, even though they've already locked up their division this early in December. So I think that's part of it. The other big part of it for me would be a big win on the road. They haven't beat a good team on the road all season. They just haven't done it. The other thing, if they pull this off, that would mean they beat the Chiefs and the Bills in the same season. So, you know, despite, you know, you're in a bad division, all that kind of stuff, it could tell you that there are certain times where the Texans can stand up and go toe-to-toe with some of these big top teams. You saw them almost do it at home against the Lions, but they just didn't have enough in that game. But you could see they can play with the best teams, but can they finish? That's what D'Amico always talks about. It's all about finishing. And this would be a big one. Now, it's a little different because Josh Allen, that was earlier in the year. You know, he was getting used to not having Steph Diggs, and Texans had him, and he's playing better right now. Mahomes is dealing with some injuries. So, but that's part of football, right? Part of it is when you get those games. And the Texans, if they can take advantage of that, this would be huge, especially to the guys knowing that, hey, we can go on the road. We can beat a good team. It's not going to be like every time we go play the Ravens like we saw last season.
For Houston, defense has been their primary tentpole all season. It'll have to be again if they want to grab this upset. What are some matchups or opportunities from Houston's defense, Charlie, that you see where they can contain Pat Mahomes and company?
Well, the Chiefs are not quite a mirror image offensively of the Texans, but there are absolutely analogies to be drawn. Obviously, C.J. Stroud is nowhere as accomplished as Patrick Mahomes. He's not particularly close to being as great as Patrick Mahomes. But Mahomes statistically is down. Of course, he'd been putting up greatest of all time path stats through 5 years. But in his first 5 years as a starter, the Chiefs were 4th, 1st, 2nd, 1st, and 6th, I think, in scoring. Last season, they dropped to 15th. So far this season, they are 12th. And a big part of that, as with C.J. Stroud's drop-off from freshman to sophomore season, who's blocking for him? The Chiefs have 2 elite offensive linemen. Creed Humphrey is maybe the best center in the game. Joe Thuney is an all-pro level guard, but maybe kicked out to tackle. because the Chiefs, right, 2 spots, rock solid guys, 3 spots, questions. I mean, 3 weeks ago, they signed veteran DJ Humphries off the street, coming off a blown ACL. And a week later, he's starting. He plays most of his first game and then zings a hamstring. He didn't play against the Browns. It's iffy for this week. That's why Tooney may go out to tackle. So there are multiple soft spots in that Chiefs offensive line. And no disrespect to Ms. Swift, your boyfriend's not that great anymore. I mean, he may have commercials all over the place and a podcast with his brother making them further fortunes. But, Travis Kelce, who's a Hall of Fame tight end, but forevermore, he's just not a big-time threat. It's a Taylor album for those not hip like us young guys. Last season, Travis Kelce set a by far career low in yards per reception at 10.6. He'd never been below 12.2, I believe. Last season tumbled to 10.6. This season is at 8.4. 8.4 yards per reception. So he's lost a step or two. He's more a safety valve guy who Mahomes will look to when in trouble. Right? Can be dangerous in the red zone still. But he only has 2 touchdown catches. So the offensive line's not nearly as good. The Hall of Fame tight end is not nearly as good. And they've been in flux at wide receiver. DeAndre Hopkins is not a big play guy, but he's been a contributor since joining the team. And even the speed kills guy, everyone thought, oh, geez, the Chiefs get Xavier Worthy to add to the mix. He's barely over 11 yards per catch. So the Chiefs' big play component of their offense has fallen back. Neither of their 2 featured running backs, are averaging 4 yards per carry. This is a vulnerable offense for the Texans D to get after.
It is, but that's the thing is they're not relying on the one specific guy anymore with Kelce, but they are spreading it around. And they have Noah Gray at tight end, who's kind of come through for them this year. They're expected to get Hollywood Brown back this week, which could be a big boost to their offense. Another big play guy to go along with Worthy. And unlike Tank Dell, lately the Chiefs have found a way to target Worthy and get him involved in the game. I think Tank had like 2 targets last week. So that's picking up for them. They still have Juju Smith-Schuster. So they have a lot of things they can do on offense. But the one big thing is, despite kind of a crazy game last week, they didn't sack Pat Mahomes one time. They hurt him, but they didn't sack him at all. He was under a lot of pressure. Another thing him and CJ Stroud have in common, they've both been under a lot of pressure this year. But, Pat Mahomes, if he's good to go, he's got weapons. He knows how to take advantage late in games, and they always seem to find a way to have the ball at the end of the game and win with the field goal or get a big play on defense to swing it for him. So, obvious statement here, going to be a big challenge for the Texans, even if Mahomes isn't 100%.
Well, and you alluded to it, Josh, that the Browns didn't get to him in the sack department. Tooney out to left tackle, fared just fine against the great Myles Garrett. But CJ Stroud can say, I relate, bro. Patrick Mahomes before this season never sacked more than 28 times for the entire season. We're 14 games into this season. He's already gone down 35 times. So the Browns didn't get home, but plenty of other teams have, and the Texans have a better pass rush with Anderson and Hunter than most of those other teams.
And on Houston's offense, I don't know what else there is to say. Texans' run game went back into hibernation against the Dolphins. Stroud got sacked 4 times. And besides a couple of touchdown catches, even Nico Collins had a quiet game. What do you guys think Houston's best opportunities will be on offense to put up points against the Chiefs D?
Short fields set up by turnovers or bottling up the Chiefs and punt returns, getting a good field position. I don't see the Texans being able to drive the field repeatedly on Kansas City. Chris Jones is so much better than any Texans offensive line. If this was wrestling back in the day where Andre the Giant could take on 5 guys at once and just throw them all out of the ring, I mean, Chris Jones is pretty close to that guy. The successor to Aaron Donald is the best interior defensive lineman in the game. They have one real good edge rusher in George Karlaftis, first-round draft pick of theirs a couple of years ago. They are dinged a little bit in the secondary. Jamari Connor, concussed against the Browns. He's very iffy. On the other side, Trent McDuffie's a Pro Bowl corner, but he's only 5'11", so I don't think you shy away from him in terms of, hey, if he's on Nico Collins, you always want to take your shots with Nico Collins. The ex-Texan, who they wouldn't pony up to keep a few years back, Justin Reed is still a real solid player in the back of that secondary. And schematics, right? If it comes down to tactical acumen, it's Steve Spagnuolo, defensive coordinating the pants off of Bobby Slowick offensively. In a one-game scenario, you never know. But Spagnuolo is renowned for the exoticness of his schemes and blitz packages that really confuse offensive lines. Well, what offensive line gets confused more readily than the Houston Texans?
To your point, Charlie, Dan Orlovsky did a whole bit on his X account. You can see the video if you want to check it out. Even last week, the guard play, the communication on the Texans offensive line, even with getting Titus Howard back, it was still a problem. Dolphins regularly put 6-7 guys on the line of scrimmage. You see them, picking guys and doing stunts and having a lot of success with it. There's one play where Titus Howard's just sitting on the ground while he's looking back and seeing the guy up the middle. There's one where Shaq Mason's looking to the right, looking for a guy to block. And as that happens, a guy runs right up the middle from the other side and gets in CJ's face. It's not working. There were times where there was only like 4 guys on the line of scrimmage rushing, and they did some of those same stunts and twists, and they still were effective when they didn't even have to account for, is this corner going to blitz? Even taking that stuff out of the picture, the Texans still had a lot of problems. So hopefully with some more experience with Titus being in there, getting back comfortable to being in that spot, they play a little better this week. But Brandon, you asked, what's their best chance of scoring here? A broken play. That is their best chance. CJ getting flushed out of the pocket and him and Nico just having to make something happen on the fly. That seems to be the only way we see explosive plays in this offense. And Bobby Slowick he talked about this at his press conference this week, and they were asking him, like, well, what are you good at? And he's like, we're good at explosive plays. And then they tried to point to an explosive play, and he's like, I think we only had one in the game against the Dolphins. It was that end around from Tank Dell. And if you think about that play, that was Tank being Superman and making like 4 guys miss. It wasn't some great drawn up play. So that's kind of my concern here. And the 2 touchdowns to Nico, that was just scramble drill stuff. So I'm concerned there just doesn't seem to be a lot of production in the offense on schedule. So I think it's going to be CJ, it's going to be Tank. And if they even throw it to Tank, 2 targets, I mean, they're getting him in the punt game going, but I just don't think that's enough. So I'd like to see that improve. And then, Brandon, you mentioned the run game. I mean, in 5 of Mixon's first 6 games, he was over 100 yards, but he just hasn't been there lately. He's failed to rush for more than 46 yards in 3 of his last 5 games. 46 yards. He only had 26 rushing yards against the Dolphins. So I think we're just seeing when they play a good run defense, they can't run the ball. You saw that against the Lions. You saw it against the Dolphins last week. And who do they have coming up? Chiefs, Ravens, and Titans. All of them pretty good at stopping the run.
It's telling when the best offense is when a play breaks down for Houston. And it's even more telling when the play that Bobby Slowick points to is actually a play that should have been a tackle for a loss because they read the reverse correctly and met Tank in the backfield. He just was able to make a couple of guys miss and then run up the field. Before we get to predictions, I want to get your final X factors for Sunday's game. And we're always interested in hearing your X factors as well. So if you're watching this, make sure you tell us in the comments what you're going to be watching for on Saturday. Charlie, what's your final X factors you'll be watching for Texans-Chiefs?
Well, too simple. Patrick Mahomes' ankle. I mean, he is not a quarterback who looks to run, but boy, he makes timely plays with his legs. And if he is gimping around, that enhances the Texans' chances. The weather is going to be chilly, but only seasonably so. It's not going to be brutal. It's going to be mid-30s. So the Texans won't be venturing into a frigid environment. And not that 35 is balmy, but I would think that the colder, the tougher it is for Mahomes to keep that ankle loose. And the Chiefs' sense of urgency for this game is a component. Right. I don't think it's the biggest carrot in the world dangling for the Texans. Well, if this happens and that happens, you could move up to the 3 seed as opposed to the 4 seed. I think the credibility factor that Josh alluded to is probably more of a driving element. Well, the Chiefs, I mean, they're 13-1, but how beatable can you look at 13-1 almost on a weekly basis as Kansas City? They want that 1 seed, 1 for the lone bye in the present playoff format. And 2, if the rematch with Buffalo is inevitable, which it certainly is not, but if they're going to play the Bills in the AFC Championship game, they do not want that game in Buffalo in January. Well, Kansas City, 2 games ahead of the Bills. The Bills' last 3 games are the Patriots, the Jets, and the Patriots again. The Bills are winning out. They're going to be 14-3. So the Chiefs can lose 1 game. Well, if they lose to the Texans, their last 2 games are at Pittsburgh on Christmas and then at Denver, which is surging and always a tough out at home. So for sake of the number 1 seed, this is a huge game for Kansas City, which is why I wholly expect Mahomes to be in there on Saturday.
It's important to them, but they're also on that same schedule as the Texans are, where Mahomes is going to have to turn around and play on Christmas on a bad ankle. So if there was ever a time maybe where you try and get him some rest, you think it would be this week. But Mahomes is just that dude. He goes out there and plays. He said this ankle injury isn't as bad as some he's had in the past that he played through. He's been practicing in full. I think the only way is if he gets dinged up during the game and maybe they feel like, well, it's not worth it to push him too hard, and maybe they get him out of there and go to Wentz. But I think we're gonna see the Chiefs trying to win a big game. Everybody's going to be watching, and it's a national game. As far as Xfactors, Brandon, I think it should be a lower scoring game. Texans have held opponents to 21 points or under 21 points in 3 of the last 4. And the Chiefs have held opponents under 18 points in 3 straight games. So I think this is where the Texans defense is going to have to step up and really play a good game, get a lot of pressure on him, maybe force a turnover. CJ will have to do just enough. I will say, even though the Chiefs blew out the Browns last week, Jerry Jeudy had a good game. So maybe Nico can get going here, because Nico's the one guy, I don't care what corner you put on him. I expect Nico to win a lot of the time. So if CJ has time to find him in the pocket, I think they can put up some points that way. Hopefully the pass rush, Derek Stingley Jr. can help you win a low-scoring game.
For statistical accuracy, Mahomes' first 5 years as a starter, the Chiefs were 1st, 5th, 6th, 4th, and 1st in points before falling to 15 last season, 12 so far this season. And Andy Reid during the week saying that if Mahomes can't go, they have full confidence in Carson Wentz filling in. Andy, Merry Christmas, and your pants are on fire. Full confidence in Carson Wentz. Come on.
Those are some big pants to be on fire. I have a couple obvious ones on Xfactors, but at least I'm not at risk of outsmarting myself here. The first is my broken record Xfactor, which is Danielle Hunter. He has been Houston's most important weapon on pass rush. If Houston wants to get the upset, it's going to have to start and end on containing Mahomes, emphasis on the end, because as Josh pointed out, the Chiefs are just snipers at the end of these games. They do just enough to hang around and kick that game-winning field goal. So on the other side, I'm going to say my other X factor is going to be Fairbairn, because I think this is going to be a low-scoring game, and I think Houston has to find ways to put up points, especially on stalled drives. They need Kaimi's leg to be strong and true. So as we've recorded this, the Texans are 3.5-point dogs. The point total is set at 41.5. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to give us your final score predictions in the comments. Charlie, this week we start with you. Final score, Texans-Chiefs.
The Chiefs' last 4 home games, working from most recent backwards, the final scores have been 19-17, 19-17, 16-14, and 30-24 in overtime. So I see little reason to not pick a close and, as Josh said, lower scoring game. And while the Chiefs are so vulnerable, if Mahomes is all right, I'm not picking against the Chiefs at home against the Texans. But boy, if Mahomes really is gimpy or can't finish what he starts, the Texans should win a game. So I will take the Chiefs, but I'm going to weasel in under that 3.5 and go Kansas City 20, Houston 17.
I'm kind of in familiar or similar territory. I think they're going to score a little more than I thought. So I'm going to lean here 24-20 Chiefs.
24-20 Chiefs. Okay. Well, you guys know, before we started recording, I was kind of at a loss of what I wanted to do here. Before the season, I picked Houston to win 11. And I said to do that, they had to win one of these 2 games, either against the Chiefs or the Ravens. So I am going to pick to defend my prediction. So I'm going to pick with my heart over my head. I think Houston can keep this game close and perhaps give KC a taste of their own medicine and win on a walk-off field goal. So I'll go 23-20 Houston. I have a feeling I may look silly when it's all said and done, so feel free to flame me in the comments. I guess you guys don't need my permission to do that. That's going to be it for this episode of Texans on Tap. We hope to see you back here live on YouTube Saturday. Remember, it's Saturday late afternoon following Texans-Chiefs, so make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on. Also, if you are an Astros fan, the three of us host an Astros podcast called Stone Cold Stros on our other YouTube channel, Sports Map Houston. Make sure you're subscribed over there as we're covering all the free agency news during the offseason. We'll have a new episode dropping Monday, maybe sooner, depending on the news cycle. But until then, come on back here, join in the conversation Saturday after the game, and hopefully we're breaking down another Houston win. And until then, go Texans.